A few years ago I was walking through the woods off the beaten track a bit, and I smelt this really overpowering sweet smell. Being nosy, I pulled back the undergrowth to have a look and found a dead body. The guy had clearly been there a while and wasn't looking great, all swollen and green and black with various runny bits. The local wildlife had also been dining well for a few days. I called the police, who told me to wait with the body until they arrived. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took a while for them to arrive, and it got dark, and I was just sat there in the dark with him for a long time. It turned out he had committed suicide. For a long time afterwards I had dreams about him, and he would talk to me, and not nice things. Mainly about how he was angry I had disturbed his resting place and he wanted me to kill myself. Probably just my imagination, but all pretty disturbing at the time. He still turns up in my dreams from time to time, and no doubt will be tonight after typing this. A few summers ago I went for a bike ride around midnight with a friend. We went our separate ways at the end of the evening, and I had about 2 blocks to ride back by myself. Because of construction, I had to ride on the sidewalk, but the streets were dead, but it wasn't a problem until right where I was about to turn left onto my street. There was this man walking by himself, maybe 40s, a little scruffy but not homeless. The sidewalk was narrow and I didn't want to freak him out, so when I got about 6 feet behind him I said, "Hey, behind you!" And he turned around and gave me this super angry look. I turned down me street and he started to follow me, literally screaming about how I was a fucking cunt and he was going to kill me and all that. I live right off the corner and I didn't want him to figure that out, so I decided to do another loop around the block. That's not the scary part. The scary part is that when I looped back around and looked down the street, I saw him standing on my fucking front stoop, staring out at the street like the motherfucker knew I lived there. He saw me ride by again, but he didn't say anything. I ended up going back to the friends, but my bike got stolen from the alleyway by the house 2 days later. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young, because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always end up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tried. So, one night I woke up to the prickly feeling, like an instinct. Just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone in this fucking tree. The family dog dashes to the window and is snarling into the glass. Terrified, I run into my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there is a strange person outside. Dad grabs something defensive and darts outside with the dogs to beat the wax off the hot head. I tremble in Mama's arms until Dad comes home and says he saw no one and to go to bed. I decide to sleep in my regular bedroom. I fill in my sister in as to what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We're all still and I finally think, I can sleep. Nope. I notice the man outside my window. From what I can see in the moonlight, he gives me a shush signal and runs away, just turns around to run a straight line away. I swear I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours. When I was a young child, I had the same dream every night for years about drowning when a huge wave swept over me and I sank to the bottom. Years later, I had a temp job delivering mail one summer during college. I saw this old lady sitting on a front porch waiting for me. When I got up there, she looked at me and said in a foreign accent, "You drowned when Oceania sank beneath the waves." Freaked me out. I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I had made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. We had a few good candidates, but the motherlode was this house I would pass on my home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day before we went to see a movie, I took him to the house. It was about dusk in summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with its high beams on and riding our ass. My friend and I took note of it, but paid it no mind as we headed back to the main road. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of the truck comes this big hulk of a man, and my friend and I are shitting our pants. He raps on the window and I roll it down. Now, the really freaky part is that this a busy road and now there was no one in sight. He asks us what we were doing at the house and I quickly lied and said we were making a U-turn. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us on our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I'm convinced it's a drug operation of some sort. Too long, didn't read in short. Don't go into abandoned houses, man. Okay, so this happened to me last summer when I was back at my parents' house during the holidays. It was around 3 a.m. and I was in my room on my computer when I got a call from my sister. Now, that was already a little bit weird since my sister's room is just down the hallway from mine and she could have just came in my room. I went to pick up and the call ended as soon as I reached the phone. I figured that she wanted to speak with me, so I got up and went to her room. As soon as I reached her door, she started screaming that someone was in the room with her, so I busted in and of course nobody was here. After she stopped crying, she told me that she woke up and saw a dark shadow just centimeters from her face, and that's when she screamed. So I told her that she called me. She told me that her phone is not in her room and that she was sleeping. Sure enough, her phone is actually downstairs in her purse. The weird part is that I have the log of her call on my phone, but she doesn't. Never managed to explain this one. My mother told me this not too long ago, but it happened about 10 years ago now. When my cousin was 17 or 18 years old, she was in a car crash and had died a couple of weeks later in hospital. She was really close to my dad's sister, our aunt, and used to babysit her kids, who were no more older than 4 years old, all the time. Our aunt's house was under construction just before she passed away, and it continued on after she passed away. One day, my aunt got a phone call while she was at work from one of the construction workers complaining about a teenage girl who keeps showing up at the house and walking around, and that she shows up a number of times during the weeks, and it has been happening for a couple of weeks. My aunt asks for a description of the girl to see if she knows her from around the neighborhood, and sure enough, the description perfectly matches my cousin who died a few weeks before. Long brown hair, red baseball cap, denim dungarees, and a white jacket. When my aunt got home, she showed them a picture of my cousin, and that all agreed that it was the girl they seen walking around the site. This story really freaked me out when I heard it because our family was never one to believe in anything paranormal or have anything of the paranormal sort happen to them before.